While there's little that can be done to directly improve the quality of late-made, low-quality forages, there are ways to improve their digestibility. In fact, research shows that digestibility of long-stem forages can be improved by 1/3 or more by simply processing it into shorter pieces. In this excerpt from the 2020 Ohio Beef Cow-Calf Workshop, Dr. Francis Fluharty explains why processing forages improve their digestibility.
Okay, I'm going to go over some basics of ruminant nutrition. Ruminant bacteria are responsible for digesting the majority of the feed. They digest feed by attaching to it. So anything we do to increase the surface area of the feed, which reduces particle size, increases the rate of digestion. That's really important. A cow has to eat every day enough feed to meet her nutrient requirements. I want you to understand one thing about forages. They are digested from the inside to the outside, not from the outside to the inside. Why doesn't grass dry out in the middle of summer? What's on the outside of grass? Pardon? Yeah, a waxy cuticle. The bacteria can't attach to that wax. There's 1 to 3 billion bacteria per milliliter per cc of rumen contents on a forage-based diet. So that really, really thin layer of waxy cuticle on a forage to a bacteria looks like a wall. Forage is digested from the inside to the outside. So here's the great irony. When I was growing up, everyone had a New Holland grinder, and they ground corn to the point where you could feed it to a chicken or a pig or some poor cow. No one had forage grinders. We need hay busters. If you're in the cattle business, from a mechanical standpoint, you either need a chop cut baler to take it down to here, or a forage buster or a TMR wagon that'll break it up. We've done a lot of different studies. You can't get particles too small of forage. You can take particles of forage that are broken down to the millimeters and put in a pellet, and that gives you your best performance. I know that if you've got a dairy background, you've heard a lot about effective fiber. What I'm telling you is these cows graze, we're giving them round bales. Our goal ought to be getting forage down to 1 inch to 2 inches, and I'll show you why in a minute. Yeah, well, here's the interesting thing. We don't want to create acidosis. If I'm and you're talking about cows, so I'm not going to talk about a feedlot, okay? If you've got mature cows, yeah, they do gulp it. But let's say that this time of year, you're giving 6 or 7 or 8 pounds of corn to that cow, and you finally grind it. Whenever if you really want to test how fast you can run or how good you are at being bumped, walk out into a cow herd with a sack of ground feed. They eat it right now. They're eating it, they're gulping it. So if you're figuring 5 or 6 pounds of feed per head, they're eating it right now. This is a meal. And if it's ground, that ground corn has a lot of surface area. That surface area creates a really low rumen pH, which I'm going to get into in a minute. And the problem with pH is the fiber digesting bacteria do not function below a pH of 6. On a forage diet, 100% forage diet, your pH runs about pH 6.7 to pH 6.9. 7 is neutral. Now here's the problem. For forage to be digested, the bacteria that digest forage, they have to attach to the particle size. It takes 1.5 hours to 2 hours, depending on the forage digesting species, to attach. They cannot attach until that forage is wet all the way through, not just on the surface, until it's wetted. Here's just a little thing. Take a piece of hay, go home, take a glass, fill it with water, stick the piece of hay into a leaf blade into that glass. What will you see on the outside of that leaf? You'll see bubbles. You'll see air bubbles. Oxygen is toxic to rumen bacteria. It's the reason that they eructate carbon dioxide. They're getting rid of the oxygen. They're called facultative anaerobes. It's an anaerobic digestion. So here's where I'm going with this. You're feeding forage. It's cold out versus the summer where they're eating lush grass. With this dried forage, it takes about an hour and a half in the rumen to 2 hours to get it solubilized, to get it wetted. Then it takes, after it's wetted, an hour and a half for them to attach. You're already losing 3 to 4 hours out of 24 hours. It's a different scenario than in the summer where they're eating a wet forage. You're only losing an hour and a half. Our time for digestion loses about an hour. Now let's go back to that pH. If they slug eat corn, that pH is going to go from 6.8 down to about 5.8. It's going to be like giving them a self-feeder right now, and the more surface area, the more rapid the decline of pH. If you are going to feed corn to a cow, and I'm going to try to convince you not to do that when we're done, but if you are, I know we're in the Midwest, I know many people do, I know I fed a lot of corn to cows. The reality of it is, though, you are taking that rumen pH below what the fiber digesting bacteria can function at. Okay, here's the other problem. I would rather give whole corn. I feed whole corn exclusively to every animal under 15 to 16 months of age because I want to reduce acidosis, even in a feedlot situation. If you are giving a lot of fiber, you don't want that corn to wash out. But if you're going to crack it with no screen in. Ideally, you would break that kernel in half, no more. That's the problem. We're trying, when you get a lot of forage into an animal, in a mature animal that gulps versus a calf that chews, you may have to break it up some. But the reality of it is we cause problems when we do that. If I've got a grain-based diet, there are about 8 to 10 billion bacteria per milliliter of rumen contents versus 1 to 3 with a forage-based diet. This difference, this threefold difference and more, is simply because of lignin. Lignin in plants is the strengthening material. If we had a block wall and the concrete blocks were the cellulose and the hemicellulose, the lignin would be the mortar. Well, here's the thing. Bacteria can't break through that lignin. So they have to break apart the feed. That's the reason animals chew their cud, to masticate, to rupture that, which is why the chop cut baler is a good idea. It helps to rupture that.